Welcome to Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comic Chat here, and we are here for another episode of your favorite podcast, Sloppy Spoilers. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the first two episodes of The Mandalorian Season 3. And they're controversial. So anyway, let me bring on my co-host. So we're going to jump right on in. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? And I am excited to talk about this and see if they are still following the way. So,
welcome to Steve Shade Wing Sellers.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the way, I feel like so far this season has not been the way, but we'll get into all of that in these episodes, I'm sure.
Welcome to Jeff, Mr. Happy Bracey.
There I am. All right, and guys, how exciting. We can see Steve once more. Steve is with us. Yay.
Yeah, it's just Nem that we can't see today.
But NIMS has a logo that we're all familiar with, so why don't you tell us what that logo is about, Mr. Nemesis?
Oh, yeah, this is the Blood Wraith unit patch there. So that's the symbol of the Blood Wraith, and I have to give a shout out to the incredible artist who designed this. He's right down there to the bottom left there, Jeff Bracey. So,
not Steve.
And Blood Wraith is connected to?
Blood Wraith is connected to my story, aptly titled Blood Wraith, in Blood World, now available to back as a campaign and it's from raincrosspress.com. Go check out on Indiegogo, and we'll throw that up in the banners in just a moment. Here we go, right there. So go check out the campaign for Blood World on Indiegogo right now. There's only 3 days left to back. And check it out. See what it's all about.
And we are all authors of at least one story in that book, and we cannot wait for this to go forward. We've had such a great time just creating our stories and working with everybody, and we're so proud of everything that we've been doing. So we're definitely looking for the support of our viewing audience. Now, to jump into what we're going to talk about tonight, I have to say, if I had to pick a catchphrase, I wouldn't say this is a way. I would say this is a mixed bag. So lots of things happen and some strange things happen, but how can I put it? One of these days, people are going to figure out that you can't spoil people. It's like having gourmet food. It's like having your mom give you a home-cooked meal. It's like having somebody that knows how to put their foot in it. You can't taste better and then go back to mediocre, whatever, and then think people are going to flow with that. That's what I feel like so far this show has done. And it's trying to, mistake is not the right word, it's trying to compensate for maybe some missteps. Maybe that's a better word, but so if you don't understand what I'm alluding to, what I mean in plain terms is that the best thing about the Book of Boba Fett was the Mando episodes. And the Mando episodes in the Book of Boba Fett are necessary for you to understand what's going on in the Mandalorian. So it had some arc resolutions and some things you needed to see in another show. And it was done better in that other show. And that's what sets us up for what's going on here. But after you see everything that it took to get us here, we would need some escalation from what we've seen before. And we have some degradation from what we've seen before from my point of view. So let me just quickly give some comments, opening comments. We're going to do episode 1 and 2. The first episode is entitled The Apostate. Now, that title alone is teeming with possibilities, except the whole thing about the Mandalorian credo seems cool at first, and then so terribly impractical until it gets a little jokey. It gets a little like, they're actually making fun of what they believe, because the whole idea is you can't take your helmet off in public. But that begins to beg a lot of very practical and logistical questions about functioning. If you can't ever take your helmet off in public, because that's, because
Who let the dogs out?
and we have our dog guest for tonight.
That beagle has some serious ideas about the Mandalorian as well. So
That's right. Steve's dog was like, I don't know about all that, what y'all talking about. So the whole idea and the whole crux of this season so far is being set up to see Mando's redemption for his creed. And it just begs so many questions for me, like, we saw him take his helmet off in the first season when he was in that colony with that woman he almost fell in love with. So he can't take it off just by himself. But also, you obviously have to take it off with a spouse, right? Because, y'all got kids. So you take it off with your close family. You have to, right? You may kiss the bride, ting, okay. Maybe you might want to,
Maybe that's why Mandalorians are always adopting.
Okay. And then you're on a desert planet, and you'd always be hot and sweaty, and there would be effects on your skin if you never took your helmet off. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So maybe I'm being nitpicky. It just started to strike me as a little cumbersome as a plot device and a little impractical. So, and the reason I went through that whole diatribe is because of how the show starts out. And then I'm going to let my co-hosts, we're going to hear what they have to say. But basically, we see the armorer, which is she's forging, a new helmet. And it seems to be the same kind of process, the same kind of thing. And we understand that the Mandalorians are traditionalists, and they're all about their traditions and their beliefs. And the first thing I thought when she said, so you took your helmet off, huh? Was, how would they know? Very Disneyfied. Okay, Derpy, we got that.
Yeah,
How
but
would
he
they
explained that in the Book of Boba Fett. He
admitted it. So that, but I get that.
No, but I'm saying that.
If he wanted to keep it a secret, he could have.
Right.
But
right.
he, like Ned Stark, he is a man of honor.
I get that, but all of them wouldn't be necessarily. Somebody would be like, you know what? Yeah, I took it off, but we're just going to keep that on the low, and you just keep rolling. So to me, it undermines a little bit of the weight I think they're trying to give the moment. I could be wrong. It's just
I don't know. I think it adds to the zealotry of those of the Watch.
No, I agree. I just know people, and I wouldn't know 100% of people.
No, not 100%.
Right. Somebody would take it off, and somebody would just be like, shh. Okay. But anyway, like I said, so we're seeing some armor being forged, and it feels very much like a flashback. And then we go out to the water, and they have a little boy there that we could completely believe was little Mando.
Mm-hmm.
And we think, are we watching a flashback? And then all of a sudden, we see that it's a ceremony to help him get his first helmet on, make him take the vow, make him understand the seriousness of what he's about to do. And then guess what happens? We got a Jurassic alligator that just decides, this is my next meal. And my next question was, y'all didn't know, after all the times you've done this, y'all didn't know that there's a possibility of alligators in the water because was anything set up? And then they spend like 5 minutes pelting this thing with everything they have, and there's no damage. There's just like no damage. So I give it was a setup for what happened next, which is Din and Grogu swooping in their little souped up ship and saving the day. But I just felt like, unloading everything they had on this beast didn't even seem to slow it down. And I'm like, so this can't be the first time then that you've lost people to, the local wildlife or whatever. So I don't know. All I'm saying is the vibe of the show seems off to me now. There was a wonder, there was a mystery, there was a drive, there was an anticipation. There's a whole bunch of things we saw before. And for some reason, I didn't feel that. And nitpicky mode switched in, and I just stopped believing what I was seeing on the screen. A suspension of disbelief just kind of went out the window. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just me, but I just don't seem to be as invested in the things you just have to accept to make the story work. Could totally be me, so I'm gonna throw it to my co-host. What's your thought off that first scene when we see the armor being forged? We think it's a flashback. We see Jurassic alligator and Mandu and Grogu showing up to save the day. Start with Steve.
Yeah, I will say I was thrown off a little bit by it because I had the same reaction. I thought this was a Mando flashback because the kid looks like he could have been a young Pedro Pascal. And because of that, you're kind of thrown off. And then you start seeing the Naboo fighter come in and save the day. And then you realize, okay, this is taking place in the present. The other interesting thing, and I really wish this had been said, and I didn't even realize this until I connected it with an upcoming episode, is that the kid that's standing there is Ragnar Vizsla, who is the son of the guy that challenged him in Book of Boba Fett. So it would have been nice to know. It would have been nice to know that because this kid ends up being more important in later episodes.
Right. So that's the Gatling gun guy.
Yeah. Hold on. My dog is.
Dang. That dog is upset about how the Mandalorian's going.
Yes, he is.
He's hearing something he don't like. Would Jeff jump in with your comments? Wait, no, here comes Steve.
Here he comes.
Do you have more, Steve?
Yes, he does have more. More barking.
Yeah, but no, I was just going to say that knowing that would have been useful. I mean, the idea is nice, but then they throw everything up, and because of that, you're thrown, and then you're following attention to call all kinds of other issues that are in the whole episode because of this. And this is kind of where you start really thinking, okay, this is not really working the way that it should be working. And there's a lot of issues that I kind of have with Mandalorian society. Hold on.
Man.
All right, Jeff.
What is going on with that dog?
Jump on in, Bracey.
All right. So here's my issues with the opening. Okay, maybe not.
All right. So yeah, so there are all those kinds of issues that it really opens up with Mandalorian society and what doesn't work, and ultimately the entire arc of what Din is trying to do at this point, because I don't feel like what Din is being asked to do makes a whole lot of sense. But we're going to get into that once we start talking about it.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, yeah, third strike, you're out. Poor Steve. All right, so I was actually into the opening. I like the almost Excalibur-like mythology of seeing the Beskar being forged. You immediately knew as soon as you saw the helmet, this is made for a smaller person, so a new foundling, or a foundling, or in this case, since Steve recognizes that this is actually the next in the line of Vizsla. And I don't know if this is adopted or if, the Mandalorians do get a little hoochie coochie time going on there without the clanking of the helmets. But that's pretty cool. It's mythic. It's evocative. It's ceremonial. You can feel the duty. Having been somebody who served in the military, taking on the pledge and being a religious person, I felt the religiosity of the moment as well. All that was really neat to me. And I was into it. And like everybody else, I thought it was a flashback too, because you've got a dark-haired little kid who looks a lot like the little Mando in those flashback scenes we saw from previous seasons. Now, to your point, DT, I have no problem with Crocagator coming out and going after everybody, using your word, because the Mandalorians have relocated. We don't know how well they know this new planet they're on.
Yeah. I
But
would
again,
also add that they may even want to have, these kind of monsters because they would consider that honorable. They
yeah,
would
I mean,
want to
like
have that as a training
there's
to test their skills on.
there's that whole mythology with the mythosaur as well,
Yeah.
that they have in their creed. So, that's a possibility too. They take the risk, danger as a part of their lives. That's how they live. As Mando's even said, weapons are my religion as a Mandalorian. So this sort of thing is going on. Now, and I love the fact that Star Wars, you don't often see in sci-fi universes kaiju, but Star Wars is loaded with kaiju, and I friggin' love that. And so at first it's pretty fun, and there's even the Mandalorian that gets gobbled up. There's every chance that guy is still alive because he's wearing the Beskar, that he might come crawling out of the side of the critter, or out of the mouth of the critter. So, it looks like a lot of people might be injured or even dead, but the Beskar is a magical material. It's mithril, it's adamantite. It's all these high fantasy things rolled up into this universe, just like lightsabers and the magic swords. The problem I had was similar to your problem, DT. They start unloading, things aren't working. They start changing tactics, which was cool. I like seeing the bombs get placed on them, taken to the air. They all should have really taken to the air immediately, with something that big rolling around. Catching this thing with their ropes was ridiculous. It's thousands of tons, and you're not holding it down. Beskar doesn't make you, masters of gravity. What the hell? And if, predictably, it just starts flinging them around like a bunch of yo-yos. And they throw everything at it except backpack missiles. Now, we did see backpack missiles did not work against the Krayt Dragon, very heavily armored creature. But I've got a feeling that backpack missiles would work on this thing that's all mouth up front and opening it wide. Let's go down into the soft, squishy gullet with some backpack missiles. Let's aim for the head, the eyes, something like that. It's really heavily armored on top. I don't know if you guys noticed, it has sort of a turtle shell. So it's kind of a riff on an alligator snapping turtle. If you watch the end credits, you'll actually see the original concept art for this scene. The creature was a lot more turtle-like. So you could have you go for the soft and squishies. Mandalorian should know how to go for the soft spots. I mean, heck, Din Djarin killed a massive rhino beast by stabbing it in a vital spot in its neck with a vibro knife. So, as kind of unbelievable as that was, let's pretend the Mandalorians are badasses for a moment here. So there's that whole thing. Another thing that did disappoint me, the 2 episodes that I watched for this podcast, is we got giant crocodigator, and then next episode we won't get into it. We got flying gator, and this was disappointing to me as somebody who is an artist and does a lot of creature designs, both for myself and other people, for commissions and whatnot. And the thing about Star Wars is you see things that you don't see before. Banthas don't look like elephants. They look like woolly rams instead of woolly mammoths. There's something we can grab onto, something that we are somewhat familiar with, but it still looks different. The Krayt Dragon is this crazy sand swimming multi-legged dragon. The giant exomorph worm, the Kahlua clawfish. These are all cool things that somewhat resemble things from our world, because there's a lot of weird things in the world that you can draw on for inspiration. But like, I'm looking at that and it's like, oh, giant alligator with a turtle shell. How exciting. Then later on, oh, look, smaller alligators with wings. All right, so they're dragon gators. Okay, yeah. That's, as a creator, that was very disappointing to me. They kind of tried to rule of cool it a little bit without sticking the landing on the functionality of the characters and the tactics that would be employed. And you have shown us far too many times how cool and how badass Mandalorians are for me just to buy the way this fight went down.
So, okay, now you just encapsulated my problem with it. What that last sentence that you said, we've seen too much advanced thinking, weaponry, fighting tactics and techniques to believe this kind of thing. But also, why wouldn't you survey the land? I know they relocated. I get that. But still, why doesn't it occur to you to have some type of survey and make a catalog database of the potential creatures of where you are. And so, I mean, because the whole thing is dangerous if you didn't even think to say what might be in that water. That is just too sloppy. No pun intended. That is just too beneath how you would have to think to be the survivalist that you are. That's why it just rubbed me the wrong way. Anyway, go ahead, Nims. Thoughts on opening?
Yeah, my problem with this first scene, I mean, you guys have hit a lot of good stuff, especially Jeff. He hit a lot of the story things that I would have hit on. My problem with this is the same problem I have with this whole first episode, which is that somehow or another, The Mandalorian has gone from being in the first, especially that first season, a very organic show that flowed. It felt like a story that was seamlessly put together, and the moments were organic, to now back to this classic Disney thing where it is a series of cool snapshots and the story is pigeonholed into it. The story is secondary to these cool moments. This is the way they do Star Wars movies. This is the way they do a lot of stuff now. And it just doesn't work. And that's why I felt like you, DT, I couldn't get into it, because it was like, this was their cool way to bring Mando back in at the beginning of season 3. And it's like, it just felt completely inauthentic. It felt inorganic. Just like later on when they go to the city that Carl Weathers' character is managing, I felt the same way there. It's like, oh, look, we're going to introduce our vision for the city. And just, and look, here's a Mandalorian castle. And look, here's this is stuff we're going to get into. But it was, all of it just felt like opportunities to show off their visions for stuff instead of making it story driven. And that's how I felt about this this first scene as well. So
I've got a question for you, Nim.
Yeah.
Now, both of these first 2 episodes are written by Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
And the way this is put together doesn't feel like the way he normally writes.
No.
Do you have an opinion on that? It feels like some studio interference.
Well, see, it's interesting you said that, because the minute I watched the first episode, I went back and went to go see who wrote it. And I was like surprised that it was Favreau, because I was like, this cannot be Jon Favreau's writing. And it was. And so I'm like, either it's the director who was involved with it, or maybe Filoni wasn't as involved as he needed to be, or it could be studio interference. But for whatever reason, I'm with you guys 100% of the way. I just didn't get the same feeling that I got for the other episodes. And as they went along, it was just, it just keeps building on itself, where we're adding things in that don't seem to fit in, and we're shoehorning stuff.
I had a thought because of what you said, the way you said, like, things are presented as like these cool things, these cool moments. And in this one episode alone, I mean, I know the series Mandalorian is a little bit of a travelogue. Usually each episode you expect to go to a new location. He's the traveling bounty hunter, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But in this one episode, we go to 4 locations and we see 4 very distinct sort of things going on. And now that you've said it, it almost feels like a bit of Disney Star Wars product placement. Like, hey, get ready for the Mandalorian castle over here. Get ready for the ruined city over here. Well, check out the Mandalorian's new spot. Like, hey, look at what Grief has done with his planet. He's gussied it up quite a bit.
I mean, later on in the series, we're going to visit Coruscant. Coruscant felt the same way. It was like, look at our vision. Look at what our Imagineers came up with for Coruscant. It's like, and so, I mean, it felt that way, and we're going to get to it. But one of the things I definitely want to talk about, it wasn't just moments. It was also major plot points. At one point we're going to drop some knowledge about Cara Dune, and it's just like, and bam, boom, 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 boom. Here, take it for the fire hose. We're moving on. No reaction.
The problem is there's no convincing connective tissue between any of it. The entire premise of the I have to go and redeem myself is not only not convincing and backwards in terms of character, it also later on is resolved in 2 episodes, maybe 1.5. And in all of that, it just doesn't feel natural. It just feels like, okay, we've done that. Now let's go on and do this. And there are just too many things going on in this entire season that don't connect. And that's really the larger issue.
Okay, so to treat it like a math problem, I'll do a compare and contrast. In that first season, it felt like Mando was this plucky fighter that you couldn't outthink, because no matter what situation he got in, he had a weapon or a technique or a strategy to get himself out. And every time somebody thought they had him cornered, he had a new piece of tech or a new piece of armor or a new thought or something, kind of like Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So then for me to see them struggling with an indigenous creature and not having checked out what could possibly go wrong when you put a foundling in the water to baptize them into the order, and then not having weapons, and then, like Jeff pointing out, not using, your rocket launcher backpack, and then all different kind of stuff, made them all seem incompetent and unprepared, and you didn't think it through. And you can't have both of those.
There were two things that I thought of with that. Two other things I wanted to mention, but first to that specifically, there's a weapon that was huge in the first season that's never made an appearance since. Where are their disintegrator guns?
Oh, well, he lost that when his ship got blown up.
Well, but where are the disintegrator guns for the rest of the clan?
That's weird, because he's the only one we've ever seen wearing it. And I couldn't help but notice on his costume, he still carries the shells for his disintegrator rifle, but he doesn't have a new rifle yet. I really miss that piece of kit too.
Yeah. But, it's like the disintegrator rifle, even if it doesn't take out the whole creature, you're blasting huge, disintegrating a whole huge holes in it. Problem solved. That's one. Two, the thing with the whole helmet thing, I got to agree with the comments here to a certain extent. I mean, I do like what Jeff said, and I like that it's a sense of honor and everything. But I think we needed to refine it a little bit, which is, maybe for members of the order, you're allowed to show your face. It says the rest of the world has to see also always the stoic face of the Mandalorian or something. Because I have to admit that, maybe it's just me, maybe I've got a dirty mind, but I'm sitting there going, do I want to know how little Mandos are made? And, does the helmet have to stay on during that as well? What is going on here? So, and I will just leave it at that. You all could.
But see, that's what
I mind wander.
There's obviously no little helmet for the little head. Otherwise, exactly. Too much protection to create progeny.
Maybe there is. You can remove that helmet when it's time to make little.
Again, this is why they adopt.
See, that's what I mean. What you guys are talking.
You got to have rituals about that, like marriage rituals and mating rituals and things like that allow for acceptance.
Yeah, you would have to think like within a core family, you would be able to show your face.
But it took it from the mythical and brought it so quickly down to the practical. As long as it stays mythical, we can buy it. As soon as we see home life and them trying to deal with life on this new planet or whatever, it all of a sudden throws the practical side of what they believe into focus. And there's some other things that happen in some later episodes that does the same thing, and it just pulls me out of the suspension of disbelief that I needed to believe that they never take their helmet off. That's so cool. And now it's like, that's so.
And the other thing that bothers me is Din's arc is damaged by this, because his whole thing the last couple of seasons was about realizing, hey, there are things that the Mandalorian code doesn't cover. There are things that the Creed, can't account for. And I'm going to learn to be a little bit more, flexible about it, even if it costs me, because my family, my child matters more. So to see them, delving in all this and showing how much more ridiculous it is, to me that, you would think that it would make Din, question things more, but no, he just wants to go and redeem himself in the eyes of the Watch for why?
Looking at this, you can see a direct parallel with the fall of the Jedi, that those of the Watch, those of the Creed have such strictures that they cannot be flexible enough to adapt to certain circumstances, as Bill Burr's character accused him of in season 2. So what's the deal? Like, you're wearing this helmet, but that's not your Mando helmet. How does this work? And Din didn't have an answer for that.
And we're going to see in other episodes that we're going to talk about that there's another character that's going to be introduced who is making a journey. She is changing her views on stuff, whereas the main character, Din Djarin, has now become rigid and unchangeable and is not able to make an emotional or philosophical journey, which is the opposite of what you have. The supporting characters should be the ones that are constant, and the hero should be the one that takes a hero's journey. So
precisely,
that's right. And they established him as what you guys just said. They established him previously as someone that was willing to go rogue for if he believed in something strongly enough, and then now he comes back and he's like, no, I need the traditional ways and that kind of thing, and so I got to go cleanse myself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. So,
I love that you brought that up.
so yeah,
That was
so
stupid too, but we'll get into that.
because the creed says if we do that, we'll be redeemed and all this different kind of stuff. And now, before we continue with that, there's another interesting factoid we have to drop. And I'm going to use Jeff's phrase of doing the work of the TV show. The show doesn't make clear enough how much time Grogu spent with Luke.
Yeah.
It felt like he was gone just a short time. Then he and Mando are back together. And that's the ridiculous end of the whole first 2 seasons. I got to get him to his own kind. He's got to be trained. He's a Jedi. He's a Force user. Mando's like, I can't do that. And I'm much too much of a loner to be saddled with this kid. And then so we get that emotional send-off. We get it. So Favreau indicated that the amount of time Grogu actually spent with Luke was like 2 years.
Wow.
2 years.
Are you serious?
So
Yeah.
2 years between Mando 2 and basically Book of Boba Fett.
Right, but the total amount of time he spent with Luke before he shows up and goes back to Mando's like 2 years, and I'm like,
I felt like he spent a hot minute over there, and that was about it.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
editorially, as far as the editing and everything in the series goes, that's the way it feels. And they should have given us some sort of indication of time within the context of the series, because as DT says, now we're having to do the work and we have to have outside confirmation. And that has been one of Disney's most fatal flaws when it comes to the handling of the Star Wars property. They're always telling you, like, hey, read this, hey, look at that, like, watch this other thing over here. And it's like, most people aren't going to do that, man. Only the Uber fans, and you're doing your damnedest to push all of them away.
well, it was one of the biggest things we called out in Empire way back in the day. How long did Luke actually spend with Yoda and train before he goes to Cloud City? Because it was very muddled, because it felt like a couple of afternoons. But here it's even more muddled. And once again, because it was really the whole point of the first 2 seasons. And so I thought we were going to get something that did it better than Book of Boba Fett did it to help us understand.
Well, if I learned anything from the 80s, is that montage compresses 1,000,000 years into one small block of time.
That's true, especially if you're Rocky, the master of the montage.
Montage.
So I just felt like, and as things play on from what we've seen so far, skipping a few episodes ahead and all that, there still should have been a greater deal paid attention to how long Grogu was gone and how he changed and what he changed. And because I tweeted it a couple of days ago, but I'm like, his power levels are unclear and all that. And so the other challenge that's going on with this show is the behind the scenes drama bent the story. And once that happens, it's not that you can't compensate for that, but you have to compensate with extremely tight writing. The behind the scenes story was that Grogu was probably going to be a one-off or 1 season or just a short kind of thing. And again, that first season is golden. We're already reminiscing about when the show was good. And there was such an emotional send-off to get him to Luke. But then in Book of Boba Fett, all of that is undermined. The whole arc is just like, okay, well, if he's just going to come back to Mando, now the show needs to be renamed Mando and Grogu, like Lilo and Stitch, because that's really what it is now. And then when you do that shift, when it bends the story like that, it's no longer his quest, it's no longer his journey, it's no longer that. It's like we want to see them. And if that's the kind of show you have now, because Baby Yoda proved to be so popular you couldn't get rid of him, then you got to compensate for that, for them being a team and what they can do together and a whole bunch of things, because we already got the father-son dynamic. We heavy painting of the father-son dynamic. We got that. How about the Batman and Robin dynamic duo, the two of them together kind of thing? Because that's what the show's about now. You need to stop pretending it's not the Mando and Grogu show, because it is.
Here's I have a theory about all of that.
Follow what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I've got a bit of a theory about all that. For one, Kathleen Kennedy has claimed that the lone wolf and cub idea was hers. And it might have been. She might, for all I know, she's seen Baby Card Assassin, something
He's
like that.
not buying it. He's not
I'm
buying
not
it.
buying it.
I'm not buying
I'm
it,
not.
but she's claimed it, so I'm
I
just gonna, like,
would buy that Filoni came up with it. I would buy that Favreau came up
well,
with it. I don't buy that.
she's actually argued that, like, they didn't come up with it. I did. So I'm going to take her at face value on this.
Whatever.
But you could still have.
You're much more generous than I am. So go.
Yeah, ditto.
I'm just going to give her the benefit of the doubt. In this case, not saying I believe it. I'm just playing the optimist here.
Okay.
So the proper thing to do would have been to develop a secondary show. Because Baby Yoda is obviously super duper popular. So you have his adventures with Luke and Ahsoka. You bring them that's the new family dynamic, and it can work very well. Problem is, Kathleen Kennedy apparently hates, Luke Skywalker and Mark Hamill, and lately she's not too crazy about Rosario Dawson either. Like, so anybody who doesn't toe her little line has got to get the axe. But too many fans like Ahsoka, so what's she gonna do? We'll see. But for me, bringing Grogu back in Book of Boba Fett really kind of ruined Mandalorian for me. It was bad enough that I wish I'd never seen Book of Boba Fett, just so, like, in my head canon, Din had completed his mission and they went their separate ways, and that was their journey and their fate, and new adventures await. Because this series is already starting off on a really bad foot, because they've broken everything that mattered from the 2 previous seasons. This whole epic journey, the development of these 2 characters, the bond they have, and the bond that we all knew there was a countdown to it being split up. And that's part of a sacrifice, especially a parental sacrifice. Eventually, the child has to leave the nest. And even though he's still like a baby, he's off with his people. Mando's off with his people. And that's kind of the way things should be. That's the way it's it's very natural. It's very organic. And how does Din deal with that? It's like when Robin was killed by the Joker. How does Batman process that? How does he go on? How does he continue? He's already had to continue with one tragic loss in his life that put him on this path of the Dark Knight. What does he do afterwards? And so, like, what's Din going to do? Is his new purpose, and I fully expected his new purpose would be, especially since he's broken his creed, all right, I've seen a different way of being a Mandalorian. I'm going to lean into this. I am going to restore Mandalore, and that's how I will elevate myself in the eyes of, the creed, the people who watch once again. And that would have been a tremendous story, but we are not going there, apparently.
Yeah, in fact, he doesn't deal at all with the fact that he has the Darksaber and what that means. Like, okay, I can buy that he's not interested in ruling Mandalore, but at the same time, I could see, like, a story element, kind of saying, okay, if Mandalorians are going to survive, I have to lead them because nobody else can brand them together. If you had an epic quest like that, where his whole quest is to unite the Mandalorians under one banner, then you have the case where, okay, now you have to go to the mines because you're not going to get the Children of the Watch to follow you unless you go in and get yourself redeemed. Okay, that would have been something, but that's not what he's doing. He's just going along with events, just kind of following along with wherever the story is going, and you're not getting the sense that this is a character-driven story, from Din's perspective. You could have had so many different possibilities. You could have had, Grogu and Mando split for a while. You have Grogu doing whatever he's doing with the Jedi. You have, Mando, continuing his quest to rebuild Mandalore, and all of these things going on. Maybe have the Jedi and the Mandalorians come into a conflict over something, and then you have to realize, okay, what do I do with Grogu on the other side? What do I do with Luke? He's taking care of my son. You would have had an emotional conflict there, for example. So you had all of these different directions you could have gone with this. And then what do? You just kind of, say, okay, they're conveniently together because I tossed this in the middle of a show that really didn't need it. And now we're at the point where, okay, we're going to resolve a major arc that, we set up in Book of Boba Fett and resolve it in an episode and a half, and then just kind of go where?
I will say this about the Darksaber. I was thinking on that, especially when we get to episode 2. I'll express my thoughts more fully, but I saw 2 outs for the Darksaber right there because he clearly doesn't want it, and it would have made sense story-wise, and they didn't go there for whatever reason.
Now, what Steve said, I want to see that show now. I want to see that season
Yeah.
where he realizes that uniting the tribes and reestablishing perhaps a new creed and perhaps writing some new rules, but paying the price to be worthy to say that with the dark cyber and the war and gaining the respect of whatever different factions, especially since we found out what Mandalorians are, that they're not a race, they're a creed. That would have been a perfect setup and something worth watching. And then even that stuff, like you said, about what do we do then if we introduce the Jedi, who also Luke is trying to reestablish them now in terms of who are they now and what do they believe. So we got all types of potential values conflicts. And then we have the father and son bond in the midst of these high value mini societies. And so, I want to see that now because that's great, but that's not what we're doing. And as we'll see in episodes to come, we're really not doing that. But anyway, not going to jump ahead. So now you guys tell me what you think, because again, I may just be biased. I may just be not in a space because y'all know me. I'm the kind of person where once I get through with something, it's hard for me to get back in. So
Right.
the next stop is to Navarro, which is cool, but I don't know if I buy the reason. I don't know. I mean,
Flimsy.
I can buy that you want a battle droid that proved itself so worthy and smart and sacrificial and a whole bunch of things to kind of help you do what you need to do. But it seems like you're a little obsessed with this one in particular, like there weren't other opportunities or other options, or there wasn't any other way you could have gone. Because what you're looking for is a function, but you're treating it like it's a quest for a resurrection of this entity. What you want done is something that can be done functionally by some other things, but it looks like you have an obsession to resurrect this thing. And so also when we get to Navarro, some funny things happened. And this is the same thing I was talking about with Star Trek Picard season 3, and that is a bunch of member berries. Remember this, remember that?
Yeah.
Because as I'm looking at Navarro, okay, we see Amon Calamari, that's cool. We see musicians, and we see
Some
creatures
salacious crumbs in the tree.
right. We see creatures of all races. So, but it was the salacious crumb cousins. Because number one, why are they there? Number two, do they have spacefaring travel capability? Because how'd they get there? And who would want them there?
I keep thinking they're like rats. They find their way onto ships, and that's how they get across the galaxy.
Yeah, but like rats, somebody would be taking them out. I'm like, are there huts there again that we don't know about? I mean, that was just really bizarre. I'm like, did somebody fly y'all in for what? And you in the trees and all that, and there's no living thing that would want to see them things looking up at you that would just shoot them. I don't know. That was bizarre.
Not to mention, nobody wants to be reminded of the rise of Skywalker. At least not me.
So Grief Karga is still running the place, but now he's not just a magistrate. He's a high magistrate. And let me tell you what I got, just like what that reeked of to me, was Lando.
Oh, yes.
When we first meet Lando in Empire, he's having a little fun with Han. He's pretending like he's mad. Come here, you big pirate. So Chewie calms down and Lobot calms down because I'm just funning with you and how you been doing with the Falcon. And they're having all these times about their old pirate days. But then as they talk and as they walk, Lando starts itching and moaning about all the problems he's having, in Cloud City, with the mining colony, with the stuff he's doing. And Han just laughs at him and he says, he basically says, you sound like a suit. You're not a pirate anymore. You're not a rebel and a scoundrel and a rogue like I still am. You're kind of a suit now. Okay. So we know how that plays out. That's exactly what this felt like to me. Grief before was managing the bounty hunters. He was literally on the edge of everything. He was the guy that was the hub that was assigning this dirty work for bounty hunters to do, and it was unsavory. And that was the vibe. And now he's wearing this robe is so long that he needs somebody to help him carry
He's
it.
got little robots on the train. That
Right,
cracks
like
me
Yeah.
he's
up
a
no
room
end.
dress, and he keeps correcting people about his title.
Yeah.
That's like if you call your girlfriend, but you propose, she'll say, "No, fiance." You got to keep letting no, this is what I am, that kind of thing. And I was just like, no, is this a character arc, or does it feel like a different character to me? But it sure did reek of Lando to me. And I was just like, okay. So since they're so heavy into member berries, does that mean there's going to be a betrayal? Does that mean there's some stuff about Grief we're going to find out later that kind of guts his character, like when Lando sold out Han and Leia? Although I would make an argument he's facing Vader, so I don't know. The only thing to do there would have been to sacrifice himself or whatever. Maybe he just didn't want to do that. But I don't know. It just felt like we're going down that same path, and these two bonded before, and now I don't trust Grief. Now he seems too interested in titles. Now he seems like one of those leaders who thinks he's more aware of what's going on in his domain than he actually is. And I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. It just felt that way to me. You know what I'm saying? So what did you guys think about us seeing Grief again? And then let's again talk in a little bit more depth about the little kind of shooing away of Cara Dune, like a few lines and boop, boop, doop, and then we're gone. I don't know. Again, it feels like to me, especially with what Steve said about how we could have gone, especially with Grogu's 2 years of training now, and especially with the Darksaber, it seems like every single thing we fought for and single thing we experienced is just being minimized instead of, realized potential. I don't know. So what do you think about that? What do you think about being back on Navarro? What do you think about meeting Grief? The mention of Cara Dune, and then we're going to get to Frank and IG-11. But anyway, start with Nims.
Yeah, once again, like I said, it just feels like shoehorn moments, except that this moment wasn't really that cool to be. I mean, the gunfight scene was cool. That was like we're going to throw you a bone to make you remember Mando season 1.
Yeah.
But the rest of this, once again, this was like a setup for Coruscant later. This is what our Imagineers imagined Navarro looks like, but it is transformed so much, not just the buildings, but the whole world is transformed. I remember that world being dusty and nasty and desert-like and hot and just not a place you want to live. And suddenly it looks like Eden over there, So I was like, what the hell is going on? You got to throw me something here and tell me why this has happened. And then I absolutely agree with you. The look at this moments were all over the place. And then finally, the whole explanation for why he was there, which was for the robot, I'm sorry, it just didn't pass the smell test. As far as I was concerned, this was a convenient way to let them show you this and get Carl Weathers involved somehow, maybe because they're going to do something with him later. But it didn't make any sense. And looking at it, his explanation was, we need this robot for spelunking so it can test the air and do all this other stuff. Well, it turns out any robot could do that, because R5, who later
That's kind of what they're made for.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's like, why did you really need this one? And you weren't really that friends. You knew each other for about 5 seconds, and then he got destroyed. So, yeah, I am sorry. I got to wave the bullshit flag on that. It's up there and it's flying high. It really did make a whole lot of sense. And like I said, I can't stress this enough. It just felt very much Disney. Look at us. Look at what we've created, this vision with all of the happy families and people walking around and the plus size musicians doing their thing over here in the corner. And
was this an ad for Galaxy's Edge?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like. And I was like, oh, this is just sad. It's just sad. So.
And if you think this is bad, just look at Coruscant and the way they handle that.
Yeah.
I'm dreading going to Coruscant now.
Yeah, I have to agree with Nims. Now that you've said it out loud, it does all of a sudden feel like a commercial for Galaxy's Edge. That actually kind of sums it up really, really well with all the member berries and all this other different kind of stuff. And then when Grief gets called out about, here's where we used to eat, or, meets up with some rogues that are part of his old life. And he's trying so hard to respond out of his new life. That felt disingenuous. That felt like a try too hard moment to me. It could have been legit and organic, because I think Mims used that word before. First season, things felt organic, that there was a story flow. But it just felt like it was shoehorned in, I guess, to kind of show us who he is now. But it didn't feel real enough to me, and it didn't even feel necessary. It's none of those things now. If you take that scene out, we're not missing anything. Remember, I told you that's always a smell test for a character or a scene. Can you
not only
we can go straight to Tatooine.
Not only that, for organic reasons, and I'm just going to say this real quick, and then I'll let you go to other people. But it's like the whole point of that fight was they were supposedly going back to this place that was a bar and is now a school, But they're telling us all this. Nobody's doing anything. If you really want to get us involved and have that be organic, they're in that building, feet up, drinking, while kids are all gathered in the corner or looking confused, while these pirates are drinking in their school, feet up on the desks, being debauched and everything. And then Griff goes in there and goes, "What are you doing in my school?" And then he looks badass and looks like he's avenging and being the high magistrate with a little bit of tinge of the badass he used to be, and getting them out of that area. Instead we've got this whole fake thing. So
when has a protocol droid other than 000 ever stopped anybody from going into a place?
Yeah,
exactly. they're just a bunch of translators. They're like, "Get out of my way, robot!" And you just walk on in.
Right, they're definitely not known for their presence or their menace. They're known for, if anything,
unless you're HK-47, but yeah.
And then again, kind of the dismissive wave of, this is what happened to Cara Dune, and we move on. Once again, the behind the scenes drama overshadows what's going on the screen and bends the story. And I have to agree with what Nims is saying about how they're saying, look at us, look at this, whatever. We've gotten rid of all this other stuff, but look at the happy place we've created. And I was like, see, when you're doing stuff like that, your audience can feel it. That's why I keep talking about vibes. Your audience can feel what it is you're really trying to do, even if you're trying to coat it with, a glossy sheen.
See, I really wish the scene had played out the way Nim described now, because think of the added tension. If there's like a whole, a bunch of like teachers and kids in there being held hostage basically by the fact that these dangerous men are in there, like, no, hang out. Like trying to give the kids a drink, like crazy stuff like that, being, just a bunch of scoundrels. And then you can't just have a shootout that these guys are going to win. Now you've got a shootout with some real stakes.
With some stakes. That's right. And it's more of an opportunity if you want to showcase who Grief is now, which I'm still not buying, but that would have been a better setup to do it with, as opposed to what was basically a bunch of posturing and quick draw, and I don't know. It just didn't feel real. Didn't feel like.
And what I will say is, it felt like somebody was like, "Wouldn't it be a cool moment to have a shootout?
Wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah, wouldn't it be cool?" Instead of, here's the story, and then the cool moment is part of the story.
Let's not forget.
They needed an action beats in there, and they didn't have enough of them, and they force fit this one in.
Let's not forget the Disney whiteboard that got leaked, the Disney Star Wars whiteboard, and like one of the things they put on there was dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are not a part of the Star Wars universe. They are part of our world. And then kind of what did we just see today? A dinosaur, a giant crocodile dinosaur. Because like they didn't even make something original. Crocodile, scaled it up, turtle shell.
This is Star Wars. We can have creatures of whatever kind you can come up with.
Absolutely.
They just said, big alligator. Steve, any additional thoughts?
A few. The only thing that I can see for why Din would want IG-88 over anybody else is this guy's got a hang up about droids. And that was because he was a child in the Clone Wars. He was orphaned by droids. He has a fear of them, or he just really hates them. And IG-88 was the only one that really kind of got through that. That having been said, does it justify him going through all this effort? Does it justify this complete waste of time that we got on Navarro? No, it really doesn't. Not from any story perspective. which is what really kind of is a stick in my craw, is that the stuff going on in Navarro was more interesting than what goes on elsewhere, like on Tatooine or anywhere else. Because here you have a situation where, Grief is trying to set up this trading hub. He's trying to set up an independent trading hub, away from the New Republic, away from the Empire, something that, can truly appeal to people outside of the system. And that's interesting. He needs a lawman. That's interesting. Mando could absolutely fit that role. That could have been an interesting thing for him to do this season, as opposed to the big fat nothing he's been doing for these 4 episodes that we see here. So that was a wasted opportunity, and it would actually have given stakes to the fight with Gory and Shard later, which you just basically see him hit this episode, and you just don't see him again, and you don't care for the next 3 episodes. And that's another thing that's a waste of time.
Yeah, we saw potential big bad, and then
yeah,
you know what the topper was though? The topper was, and I really laughed at this, when we find out he can pressurize his helmet anyway.
Oh, that was what I was. Yeah, thank you. I was going to say that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. We always knew that. And I was like,
helmet anyway. What's the point of worrying about the atmosphere?
Yeah, we've seen him. Yeah, we've seen these guys in space before. We've seen them underwater before. So it's like, okay, why is he worried about no atmosphere?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
If it's radiation, Beskar can probably be a defense against that. It does everything else. It protects you against everything else. It's a magic metal, more or less. It's just ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, there are just so many things they introduce, they wave aside, and then other things that are like, okay, we resolve it in 5 minutes, and then it was like, okay, well, what's the point of this then? And it's just not earned, and it's just I just feel like as a viewer, my time is being wasted on things that don't matter.
Here's what got me about the scene,
and it's like, oh, go ahead.
Well, here's the things about Navarro. I like seeing Grief again. I'm with you. Like, it's too clean, too fast, especially knowing that it's just 2 years. This place should still look dirty. It should still look like it's struggling. But all of a sudden, it's become this mecca that didn't track. And, after I said it looks like an ad for Galaxy's Edge, I really do honestly think that was just an ad for Galaxy's Edge now, because that's exactly what it feels like. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't look like that. Grief shouldn't look so magnificent in his, kingly robes and all this. I did like seeing that he's still a badass. I did like, throwing his past up in his face. You hired us to do murder in this place over here. And that made me want more of that. And I agree with Steve, like we could do the whole series in one location for a change. We could do it like Book of Boba Fett, but hopefully much better with a one location sort of thing going on, because we did so much bouncing around in the previous 2 seasons. But then the statue of IG-88 was pretty cool, even though I don't know if they'd have enough of those parts. Thermal detonator is pretty ruthless. And forget having a chip, the bomb was inside him. All of his internals are gone. Yeah. But it was kind of neat seeing that he'd been welded together. I just figured
they just cobbled together a statue based on, spare IG parts.
Yeah, you could, when he goes rogue, you can actually see like all the little welded pieces, which I thought was a really nice touch on the design part. But the worst thing about it is when you get to that point, his whole motivation for going there is a bust. It goes nowhere, and it doesn't go anywhere later when he goes to try and find a solution. Jawa say no. It's like, oh geez, what am I going to do? Oh well, here's this droid. Oh, whatever.
And even the in-character reason, which would have made at least a little more sense, is not even brought up. So you have to do the work of the show to justify this at all.
Yeah, and then like and this is the most Disney thing for me, is they've got to put in, in the Star Wars prequels, Lucas got off track with his humor. He had a lot of just kind of stupid kids humor in there, like C-3PO getting dragged by. Oh, what a drag! I've lost my head over this as he's on a battle bot, and it's just dumb. Whereas like the situational comedy that came from R2 and C-3PO and some of the other characters, Never Tell Me the Odds, that was so good, so organic. It was snappy. It fit the moment. But now we've got this stupid thing where like the little aliens are talking this language that we can't understand, but we can understand. And then Grief's translating, and like even Jen's like, I got it. I figured it out. He's kind of speaking our language a little bit. And then Grief's still like, Why are we doing this dumb thing? Why are we doing this very dumb thing that is pointless? It's not funny. It's not even cute. And so, other than that one moment of our little bit of a gunslinger action outside, this whole thing could have been cut out, and I wouldn't have missed it.
They did that whole thing to remind you of the Babe.
Yeah,
So-
I will say I did like Carl Weathers'
The babe with
performance.
power.
I thought he was fine. Like I thought he did a good job. But
Who
you know,
knew?
I tend to
Grogu?
agree. I tend to agree with DT here. There was it was a very Lando-ish type of portrayal. I was thinking actually like Lando circa the Thrawn trilogy. Where he's a bit more settled. I don't necessarily think that he's going to betray anybody, but I do think that they're definitely trying to set him up where he's in that awkward position where
Well, this
I
could-
have to do what I have to do for the good of Navarro, and
Yeah.
I have to make sacrifices. If we're going to see anything involving him, I think it's going to be something in his past. Like, what did he sacrifice exactly? To make Navarro what it is today.
I mean, this could be
I
fun.
could see something coming out of that.
What happens when the guy who's used to being quite ruthless has to become a politician? He's trying to pretend he's this good guy all of a sudden, and then he finally realizes, like, I'm not really that good a guy after all. I'm still that scoundrel, and I'm in charge of everything.
All I'm going to say is, after watching all this and then talking to you, I justified that I went back and looked at the credits, and I still don't believe Jon Favreau wrote this. I really don't. So,
It does have. I will say these episodes have Kathleen Kennedy written all over.
I did find out something kind of neat, and this is just like my martial arts nerdism. Watching the credits go by, I was like going by like the credits in order of appearance, and I caught a name that you guys might not be familiar with, a fellow named Latif Crowder. Latif Crowder is a Brazilian capoeira maestre, and he does stunt doubling for Din Djarin, and so like I was like, oh man, okay, so like I was wondering who was doing all the fight stuff. And if you guys have ever seen Tony Jaa's The Protector, he has a wonderful fight with him. It's capoeira versus Muay Thai. So check that if you get a chance.
Okay. Okay, cool. IG 11's resurrection felt very Terminator to me.
Yeah.
He's crawling across the floor. He's reaching. He's in pieces, but he's determined all the different kind of stuff.
Well, who else expected this exact same thing after he gotten blown up? I did. I said he's going to revert to old programming. Boop.
Yeah, but it should have paid off a little bit better than that because, like you said, it was a bust. And then we get a space fight. The one thing about this show that's still good is I still like the space battles. They keep using the same maneuvers because they keep, luring ships into mountains or asteroids that they somehow can maneuver around. So they keep using that kind of thing, but it's okay.
Hey, I gotta hand it to the pirates. They actually handled the asteroids better than the TIE fighter pilots did. But then again, that's kind of where they hide out.
Right. So those space chases still, plus you get the coolest Star Wars sounds. If you don't have a lightsaber, you got to have the TIE fighters and you got to have the laser blast because that's what Star Wars sounds like. So that part is still cool. But then it's like, he's going to confront the Pirate King or whatever, and then no. Okay, so then it's off to Kalevala, another planet in the Mando system, and it's where there's a castle. And once again, I have to say that everything that happens in this scene had me scratching my head. Because first of all, I mean, the explanations in the scene is that without the Darksaber, Bo-Katan's people, went off and became mercenaries who wouldn't follow her. And I get all that. That's another staunch traditionalist. It has to go this way kind of thing. But Bo-Katan is just sitting there doing what? Is she thinking? Is she meditating? Is she planning? Is she pouting? Is she sulking? Is she suicidal?
She's doing the Conan on the throne thing.
Yeah, she's
exactly.
definitely
What'd you say? She's doing the what?
The
Conan.
Conan on the throne thing.
Yeah, it's exactly what it looked like to me.
That's what she looks like. She looks like she's posing a la Conan.
Conan's Bo-Katan's furrowed brow as she sat upon her throne.
Wearing his crown upon a troubled brow.
I guess, but it's another thing that felt very inorganic to me because once again,
doesn't make any sense.
The practical rushed in on me when I saw that. I'm like, so this is what you do all day? So you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you fix your hair, because obviously your hair is fixed. You go to the bathroom, you sit on the throne, and you just all day long. Really? No. And it's because if you want me to buy that someone was getting ready to lead a revolution, establish new order, unite a faith, unite a city, unite a planet, but then that goes awry. Now I don't know what to do.
She's waiting for Riddick to bring her a head in a box. That's what she's doing. So.
I'm
you
like,
keep what you kill.
And this messes with Rebels so much because, like, she was leading a contingent of Mandos without the Darksaber for forever before it was gifted to her. She didn't even win it in battle there.
Except being David Taylor, yeah.
But
so like everybody abandoned her. Everybody, really? She didn't have anybody loyal enough to hang out with her. Not even the lady who gave her the Darksaber in the first place.
And if
not even the other two from last season that charged the entire Star Destroyer with them.
Yeah.
And we're continuing with the theme of zealotry. Then ego would have been hurt, or pride would have been hurt, or something would have been hurt. You would have become determined. And like Steve said before, once again, Steve keeps rewriting the show in a better light. Then maybe you want to show that I can't leave without the Darksaber. Maybe you want to show that I'm worth following. Maybe, like Jeff just said, you could convince some people to stay out of personal loyalty to you. So it's kind of like we had this idea of how this thing was going to go down, and that didn't happen. So we are all out, deuces, and I'm just going to pout.
I mean, I can only accept this if she pushed everyone away. If she decided she wasn't worthy because she didn't have the Darksaber, after having proved in the past that she is a charismatic leader, she can lead, she is strong enough, she is charismatic enough, she is smart enough to lead. So this makes no sense to me in the context of the show right now. Just no sense at all. And what are the Mandalorians supposed to do without a leader wielding the Darksaber? The Darksaber has been lost several times over the centuries. What did they do previous to that? Did they all just sit around and mope on their little thrones? No. Like,
they're all being the Mandalorian Creed.
They're all just being mercenaries.
That's what I'm saying. No one with those character qualities would react like that continuously. Yeah. You might have some down moments. If we were going to see her again, I was expecting her to see figuring out a way to build a new faction, figuring out a way to build a new temple, figuring out a way to make a mark some kind of other way.
Mandalorians are supposed to be like Marines, like in the part of the Marine credo is survive, adapt, overcome, and that's what they should be doing.
That's right. Which was season 1 again was rife with. We saw that type of thinking, but this, so that just kind of threw me off. And then, Din still has the Darksaber, but Bo-Katan is kind of beating on the inside as well as beating on the outside, and calling the Children of the Watch a cult, all the different kind of stuff. But Din is like, no, I'm here to get redeemed, and so where are the mines? And Bo-Katan is like, it's all destroyed. He's like, no, they're not. I'm going to check it out or whatever. So he's determined or whatever. And she says, so she seemed dismissive is not the right word, but she seemed too defeated as a character.
I'm a little bothered by this whole thing anyway. Are you telling me that after all these years, including the last 2 years that apparently happened, and nobody bothered to go to Mandalore to check it? Nobody bothered to do
I heard it was poison.
I heard it was poison. Nobody bothered to actually go down there with atmospheric sensors to check it. I just find that completely difficult to believe. It's very difficult to swallow.
Okay, and on top of all that, the name of the episode is The Apostate. And an apostate is someone who renounces their faith or renounces their political affiliations or renounces something that is dear to them and all that. So the episode was much more about him redeeming or trying to get back, but he didn't renounce necessarily what he believed. He violated a code and wants to be restored. But an apostate is more someone that says, later for this, I don't believe in this anymore. I'm going another way. I might actively fight against that which I once believed. I'm going to let other people know, kind of like Ginger Duggar is doing right now with her book tour. I'm going to let people know that
Bo-Katan is the real apostate in this episode.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So maybe
that's a good call.
Yeah. So maybe we could buy that, but it's certainly not Mando. So that kind of thing. So I don't know.
Still a true believer.
The entire vibe just feels off to me. It just felt like a letdown. And again, if you're going to make the show be, the Batman and Robin formula always works. We got the actual Batman and Robin. We got Xena and Gabrielle. We got Lilo and Stitch. We got, you name anything with a dark person and a lighter person for comic relief. That dynamic always works. So if we're going to do that, then we need to do that. But, just yet another quest, because it took my helmet off and we had a moment and all that whole thing. I would have, since we've been rewriting the show, I would have wanted to see not just him wanting to be redeemed, but him having to be convinced to want to rejoin his original order and having to go through enough soul searching for why. Why do I believe this? I know they say me and everything, but apparently I've met something I love more than I believed what I believe. Mm-hmm. So why we want to be a part? I would have expected them to fight. I know he saved the day with the Crocodile, but I would have liked to seen more resistance. And they just seemed a little bit annoyed and maybe a little stiff, but we're just going to pick up the business as usual. And that is not of enough of a values conflict for me personally as a writer and a fan for an episode entitled The Apostate, unless we are indeed referring to Bo-Katan. That works. We can definitely buy that. But if we're referring to Mando, it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough as far as I was concerned. You would have to sit down. I know, we don't like voiceovers, but, he could have talked to somebody. He could have even talked to Grogu, and Grogu just does the Grogu thing. Why am I doing this? Why do we come back here? Why do I still believe this? Do I still believe this? Is there a better life for us out there? Should we have continued on the stars? Just so many different things I would have liked to see. Just 10 minutes of that, of some type of struggle, like, do I want...
that's such a good way. That's such a good way for him to get his thoughts out, because, like with Grogu, there, we can actually have that internal monologue work as he's talking to somebody, because Grogu doesn't do more than like his little squeaks, grunts, and chirps and all that. So it still works as like that theatrical moment of the internal monologue expressed verbally for the audience to appreciate, and that would have worked just fine.
What I would have done is I would have had. Because I always like to learn things about characters that we didn't know before. I would have had Grogu do something like project a force vision of everything being destroyed if Mando doesn't go back. I know that would have been pushing it.
What if he foresaw the future or something?
Yeah, but I would have taken the push. I would have had Mando see, that he's pivotal. And I know that makes him a little too Luke Skywalker-ish, but I still would have had to give him some type of in-story reason that was stronger than what we saw. And I definitely would have had him dead set against it, because he got a taste of a different life. He got a taste of a son. He got a taste of higher adventure. He got a taste of being free. He got a taste of going rogue and all different kind of stuff. So you got to give me a reason.
I love the idea that he's destined to be king and he doesn't want it. That's a great conflict.
Yeah.
But we don't see it.
No. Doesn't feel like that at all.
Want it. Right. So yeah. So a lot of people said that, this was a good start or whatever. And I don't know. Like I said at the opening of this, it just felt kind of like too meh. Should have been.
It's okay-ish.
It's fine.
It's okay.
It should have been great, and it wasn't. Yeah. And it was a letdown.
Yeah. All right. So, any last thoughts before we move on to episode 2?
No, I'm good.
We're good.
Let's do it.
In the conversation.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to episode 2. And episode 2 is entitled "The Mines of Mandalore." Now, there's such an extreme shift and tonal change, at least to me, again, to the second episode, until I had to ask, I'm like, am I watching the same show, the same season? It's the same thing? Because it felt, for lack of a better word, like we were watching
Lord of the Rings.
No, like we were watching Star Wars meet Scooby Doo. Okay, we got ourselves another mystery. And we got to get to the mines, and we don't know what's going to happen. All this different kind of stuff, and we need some clues. And and when you do that, you know that all the leaps are going to have to be right, or else you don't have a story. So you have to find another way to engage the audience, because of course you're going to be able to get to your goal, or you could pull a Joss Whedon and somebody dies, or you could pull a writing trick to where the whole plan falls apart completely, and you don't. But it felt, I don't know, it felt a little again like a bit of a self parody. It felt a little bit like they were winking so hard at what they were doing. It just didn't feel, it didn't have any gravitas, or it didn't have enough for me to buy everything that happens. So let me hear your thoughts about this episode. Like I said, it could just be me. It's just, that's where it felt. Nims, what do you think episode 2?
Yeah. Oh man. This is where it all starts to go off the rails. And I have to admit, I had seen some previous comments from other people that, I watched their stuff on YouTube or whatever. And so I was kind of curious. And it seemed like a lot of people had the problem with Bo-Katan in this episode, and then later on in the series. And there's more that I would have to say as we progress. I don't have a problem with the characterizations of Bo-Katan here. She seems to be exactly who she's supposed to be. My problem is that they've turned Din Djarin into a complete dumbass. I can't say it any other way.
Idiot. He's the Worf of this episode, yes.
Yeah. So it's like
he got Worfed.
And I don't understand why they did that. Not only have they turned him into a moron, he's forgotten how to fight. I mean, they've shown before that he's every bit as skilled a fighter as Bo-Katan. They did that when they were fighting on that ship, when they went to rescue Grogu. And yet, Bo-Katan cleared through those orcs. I don't know what else to call them, because that's exactly what they look like, is orcs.
Morlocks is what somebody.
There you go.
They look like the
exactly
Morlocks from the Time Machine movie.
That's
they
good
look
too.
exactly like Morlocks. I was totally going to go there.
So Bo-Katan took out those just fine. Meanwhile, Din Djarin spends this whole episode getting his ass kicked by everything, including water and gravity. So, he belongs in a certain D&D group that I know of. That's all I'm going to say. So
he does act like a member of the Phandalin 5.
Yeah. So it was just, it just made no sense. And I don't understand why it really felt like you had to degrade Din Djarin at the expense of Bo-Katan. And I hate that this is causing grief for that character online, because that character doesn't deserve it. Who deserves it is whoever decided to downgrade Din Djarin to serve whatever purpose they decided to serve. So
that's right. Even if it's just pure wokeness, we have to exalt Bo-Katan, like you said, at the expense. Jeff?
So I referenced Lord of the Rings because this felt like the Mines of Moria to me. It became a dungeon crawl, quite literally.
So you were expecting Din Djarin to be like, and they call it a mine. So
we're in the mines.
Why, you fools?
We're in the mines. We got the big monster, and then we get attacked by water, and we've got Morlocks for some reason, or I guess they're standing in for goblins and orcs. They're like, oh no, they're not Morlocks. They've got 4 eyes instead of 2. Yeah, go watch like the 90s Time Machine. Those are the same Morlocks. Don't give me that. Again, lack of creature originality. I'm not liking this at all. From an artistic design perspective, I will say the Scorpion robot later on was way cooler than these other creatures that we've seen so far. But I will say big ups to them for continuing to use people in suits and practical effects as much as possible. Even the little tiny aliens, all the little rod puppets. I love that, just for the fact that it was a physical effect in there. CGI where you needed it. The weird cyborg thing, the big robot thing, that's fine. I love the fact that other stuff was still practical. But okay, yeah, Mando's making some dumb some dumb moves. And unfortunately, we do have a precedent of that, because when the story calls for him to be dumb, we've seen him do dumb things, like, get tricked by the people on the fishing trawler when it was like an obvious setup. This guy deals with scum and villainy all day. He goes and bounty hunts tricky, sneaky, dangerous people, and he has no problem bringing them back to grief. But like the fishermen are like, hey, check out this hold here with this dangerous critter. Poosh, in you go. Like, well, no. So now we get more of this here. It's like, hey, look, a Beskar helmet. I bet I can take that back to the founder and she can do something with you. Oh, no, damn it. Oldest trick in the book. Fell for that. And I will give him a bit of leeway on the fight scene with the Morlocks, only because the scene later with Bo-Katan illustrates why she should be the one with the Darksaber. She knows how to use the Darksaber. Din's fighting is so clumsy here because he cannot wield the Darksaber. And I have to give it to the choreographers. I like the fact that you see him, he starts off with a couple of quick things, and then the next thing you know, it gets heavy on him. And he's dropping, and he's swinging it like it's a 20-pound sledgehammer instead of a finesse weapon in your hand. And so I appreciate that. And the fact that, for me, the struggle of this fight makes sense in the context of everything we've seen so far. And then Bo-Katan, who should have the Darksaber, when we see her wielding it later, she's like a flipping Jedi with that thing. She is a total badass. She is a machine of destruction, like she should be with it. So I bought into all of that. And but yeah, like I don't get the dumbness that happens. Like you fall for what just feels like a trap. If there's Morlocks in here, what else might be in here? There, we got the crocobats, the croc dragons. What else might be down there? You're like, hey, let me stop, not check out anything, like check out this thing. Once again, story-wise, let's just make him dumb for the sake of the story. Let's have him wade into the water, and for some reason, he can't tell that there's a drop-off, and he sinks 300 feet down without pressurizing his helmet. I thought he was planning on dipping himself all the way in the water anyway. Wouldn't you seal your helmet for that? But no, he's drowning. Why? Why? Wasn't his helmet already sealed when he stepped out in the first place? No. How can you write a story and then forget what you wrote just like 3 pages ago?
Don't ask these questions.
Yeah. Don't ask. Where's the editors? So, yeah, for me, like, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan was fine this episode. Bo-Katan started to feel like Bo-Katan once again. But I do think, and I kind of like how they built some things up, even though I hate the trashy woman who fixes things. Although the little idea with the Jawas was pretty cute.
I'm finna to rant on that.
The little thing with Jawas was pretty cute. I feel like that's the sort of thing that she would do. And we got a couple of plot devices. We got the R2 unit. Like, oh yeah, it can fly the ship. And we're teaching Grogu how to navigate. It's like, okay, that's clearly going to happen sometime soon, much sooner than I thought. But that makes like the visit to Bo-Katan just seem sort of pointless, because like we had to go right back and go bring her back. So this is all unnecessary story, when what would have been much cooler is when he tells her, like, I'm going to go save Mandalore. And then suddenly Bo-Katan kind of like,
right then.
She comes out of her funk, like she gets that fire back, and the two of them go off. And that would have been really epic. That would have been great, instead of like, wasting time. So that's like 15, 20 minutes out of 2 episodes of time wasted right there. Just like, the stuff with grief could have been trimmed down so much more. But yeah, this cannot be Jon Favreau's writing. I've seen too many of his films. He's too good to write like this. He's too good.
So maybe that's another behind the scenes.
These are, I swear, these are edicts. He's given a list, and he's got to figure out how to make it work. Star Wars, dinosaurs. Oh, shit, okay, dinosaur in here somewhere. Squeeze it in somehow. Like I feel like any moment now, Will Smith is going to step out of the frame. He's like, and so what happens? A big fucking spider. This guy's really, I think he's watching too much National Geographic. Did he tell you about the spider? Yeah, he mentioned the spider.
No, he's going to come out and he's going to slap Mando in the face. Okay, Steve, additional thoughts.
Yeah, I really think that this is coming from Kathleen Kennedy, because this whole episode sounds like something she would have written. It really feels like that. The whole thing of making the male hero look incompetent so that the heroine can look good, that is Kennedy. That is absolutely a Kennedy trope. And I think that she probably did, put some edicts on them that hamstrung them here, because otherwise this is inexcusable. There is no reason, why Din should be portrayed as this ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, he tripped up legitimately, and then, okay, we can get Bo-Katan to come in and rescue him. Whatever. I think it's bad time management, but okay, fine. Let's kind of go with that as a formula. But I mean, it's just that Din is continually making stupid mistakes, going into the mine and getting captured in the first place. And then the whole business of him going into the water. Yeah, and yes, his helmet should have been sealed. I don't know why he would be drowning. Let's go in, without checking what's in there first. And here I am wearing a ton of full plate Beskar going down into the water. Yeah, that's really smart. No, Din would not do that. He's smarter than that. I mean, at the very least, if you have the droid, get the droid to examine the water. Do something. Use your onboard instruments. You have an armor full of technology. You're basically, Iron Man. Why don't you do this stuff? Do things that would have made sense for him to do, with somebody who is a trained warrior, who is a trained bounty hunter, who's done this for years. That's fine. And I agree, Bo-Katan is not the problem here. I think Katie Sackhoff is great in the role. I think that she's usually written very well. I think that, she gets some really good scenes, with the Darksaber. All of that is fine. The problem is that Kathleen Kennedy cannot have, the male hero and the female hero being equals. And that really bothers me. I don't know why it is constantly like this when she gets involved. And it shouldn't be that way. I think that they should have equal but complementary strengths. And there's no reason why Din and Bo-Katan can't be equals in a story that is called The Mandalorian. The story is about Din. You don't want to make him look like a complete clown, on his own show, and make Bo-Katan look like more of a hero than he is, consistently.
Especially when we've seen the balance they have between him and Cara Dune. It worked. It worked so well.
Absolutely. That's an example of what I'm talking about. You have the male hero and the female hero, and they are balanced. They have, the things that they're good at. Cara is more of being a, blunt, down on the ground trooper, and she's very good at it. And, Din is a very skilled bounty hunter with all of his Mando weapons. It worked. That was very, very good. There's no reason that he and Bo-Katan can't have a similar dynamic and make that work.
The rest of my food?
Yeah. And I'll also say,
guys, I will be right back.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. As far as the Darksaber, there are several different ways that Din could have learned to use the Darksaber. In fact, that could have been something that his story could have involved. Like, okay, I have this thing. I found out that I'm stuck at using it. Maybe I should go somewhere and learn how to use it. And he has a couple of ways of doing this. He could have gone to Bo-Katan and asked her to train him, so he would be ready to go down in the mines. You don't see anything like that. He could have gone to Luke Skywalker, who is a trained Jedi and highly skilled at using a lightsaber.
Or even Ahsoka.
Even Ahsoka. And any number of people that could have taught him, the basics of using the Darksaber. And does he go to any of them? No. He is still handling this thing like a chump. And he is not doing anything intelligent, to deal with that problem. And because of this, he just looks more and more stupid because of this.
I just got such a cool idea.
What's that?
What if he can't go to Bo-Katan? She won't teach him because she comes to the Darksaber. Sure. He can't get at the Jedi for whatever reason. What if? How cool would this be? There's the one other character who's used the Darksaber that we know of. He has to go bust out Moff Gideon to learn how to use
That's
the
another
Darksaber.
Possibility.
How cool would that be?
Or he could find Sabine, who is also a Mandalorian and who also has training using the Darksaber.
Yeah, but the Moff Gideon thing would be so much cooler.
That would have worked.
That would be a pretty epic story.
Ways that this could have worked. And it's just none of it happened.
We could have introduced and found Mara. I'm always down to see Mara Jade. I'm always trying to figure
I
out
am always down to see Mara
get her in the
anywhere we
story.
can find her.
See,
Now, let me go ahead.
I was going to say, I really think that this whole dynamic between the two of them should be the two of them moving closer together and finding elements of each of their creeds that they want to incorporate, and then Jaren finding, putting his support behind Bo-Katan to be the leader of Mandalore, and eventually somehow she gets the Darksaber.
Or they have a political alliance.
Right.
People have been hinting at a relationship, and I'm like, why not have a political marriage based on convenience?
If he has to be,
that would happen among the Mandalorians.
Like Mon Mothma?
Yeah.
Yes,
If he has to be the king of Mandalore, this would give him the impetus to go learn how to properly use the Darksaber. But
you build up to that.
Here's the opportunities that I saw. Like, as soon as he went there, is like, she's like, if you still got the Darksaber and all this stuff, especially after he sees her wielding it, how good she is with it. I immediately thought, like, you see him like picking up his gear and he picks up the Darksaber. If I was writing this just to move this part of the plot along, I'd be like, well, this creature defeated me, and then you defeated it. So by right of combat, the Darksaber should go to you. Now, she may or may not accept that because I have to win it from the person who actually has it, and this creature didn't take it up. But that was an out. And then, like, you can set up this thing where, like, all right, then I challenge you to a duel, like he did with Tar Vizsla. And she could win the Darksaber away from him that way.
Exactly.
And that would still fit within the creed.
Mm-hmm. But I like the journey the journey that Bo-Katan is taking right now.
Yeah.
I think that her journey of going back to being more traditional and seeing something mythical down in that lake is amazing. That's amazing writing.
Yeah.
Right. So we should
because the mythosaurs are supposed to be extinct.
Show Bo-Katan, because where is Mando's journey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this could quite easily become the Bo-Katan show as opposed to the Mando show.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to do my little rant here. I hate Pelimoto.
So, yes.
Because it has been clear that I hate Pelimoto. I can't stand it. Can't stand them lying, scheming, never actually telling the truth about anything, overcharging people stuff. Can't trust you. You're a wild card. At any minute, if a better deal comes along, you sell me out, and you're trying to act like you my friend. Can't stand it. Just had to throw that out there because y'all know how I get with characters I can't stand. Can't stand it. Okay, so there's that. And then obviously all the stuff we talked about in the caves and the interesting creature that's a cyborg that's operating these exoskeletons that, is bigger than he is, and, not sure what's going on there. That could have been interesting or whatever if I didn't have to spend every 5 minutes seeing Mando get defeated again, feeling stupid again, can't react fast enough again, doesn't have enough weapons again, can't fight his way out when all he did.
Couldn't he just activate his whistling birds and kill that thing, even with his arms pinned? He's got all this stuff.
He never used it.
He did in the first season was fight his way out. That's all he did. When he was surrounded by impossible odds, all he did was find a way to beat him. So so whatever. So all that's going on. So we've talked about all that stuff in the middle. So again, at the end, when you're just, wading in the water, I said this on Twitter the other day, bringing back a vial of dirty water that tests positive as Mandalorian well water doesn't prove you bathed in it.
Yeah, I was expecting him to bring the R5 unit down there to like holo record it.
Yeah, record it. And then also the R5 units clear comedic relief, situation again makes the IG-11 thing so nonsensical because if an astromech droid could do what you want it to do. So I understand what Steve was saying. They should have played up that angle a little bit more about his history with droids or whatever. But if that unit could do everything that you needed, then that obsessive quest and going back and asking Peli about the parts, and we're going to ask the Jawas about the parts, and the Jawas are like, it's like if you're trying to get an iPhone 4 now, that's how they responded. Like, they don't make that no more. Like, what century are you from?
I was so surprised he took that at face value because not only is Peli not trustworthy, but we all know Jawas aren't trustworthy. He knows they're not trustworthy.
So you keep dealing with these characters who you're always talking about two sides of their mouth. But anyway, so I can't get my iPhone 4 apart, so I can't bring back IG-11. Okay, so then I'll take this little, R2 knockoff. Yeah, okay. And then he does everything I need him to do until he doesn't, and he just disappears. Okay, and then whoops, I can't fight. Okay, so scene after scene after scene, I'm just like, okay, all right. And then the pressurized thing, you guys talked about that. I'm like, that's like when we found out R2 could fly. Really? Because that changes retroactively other scenes we've seen if you can do all that. So I agree with Jeff on the did you read what you wrote 3 pages ago kind of thing. And then so finally, when we get to the climactic thing and he's wading in the water, that's a serious church song, by the way, for when you get baptized.
Let's go down to the river to pray.
I just couldn't get the waters of Lake Minnetonka out of my mind.
If only I could have seen
so stupid, and it's not very Mandalorian. I mean, the whole thing. I get that it's meant to be a spiritual baptism, blah blah blah. But you know what would have been a more satisfying, redemption arc for Din? Actually, fight something legendary, fight something cool, and have him win. And especially if he's been losing the whole time, the whole episode, he's been losing. Give him a big win. He's earned it at this point. He's been screwing up so often, and it's like, okay, at this point, you give him the win, and then he redeems himself. But no, we have to have Bo-Katan and get in the middle of this as well. So of course, we have to have the whole baptism.
Yeah, I think this is setting up Bo-Katan for the future because Din is pretty much unconscious when she's hauling him out of the water. She's the one who sees a surviving mythosaur. These things are supposed to be extinct. And if she can't have the Darksaber, if she tames a mythosaur just like Mandalore the Great did, then the Mandalorians will have to respond to that. And they will have to this is the symbol of our order, the symbol of our planet, the mythosaur. There is, it's not cursed. We can bring it back. We can bring Mandalore back. And that would be the rallying cry.
Yeah, that's great.
That's where I think they're going to go.
That's great. But that means this show is just like The Flash.
Yeah.
It just feels like this.
That is not a positive comparison.
No, it's Book of Boba Fett, where his sidekick became the main character.
Everybody else's development is what we're watching, and the other characters can out-character the main character with everything they're supposed to do. So we see them grow and we see them change, and the main character is stagnant at best, regressive at worst. Really?
So
that's the Flash.
It's so disappointing after 2 seasons of seeing this character take this amazing arc. And it almost feels like Pedro Pascal isn't into it because I was expecting, you were talking about his redemption arc doesn't feel right. And I'm sure he's reading the script and going, man, this is really rushed and stuff. And
contrast this to The Last of Us, where he plays a similar character and he clearly is putting more heart into that.
Yeah, he doesn't, and I don't know how much of this is him and how much is voiceover because he can just voice over and, Crowder can do everything in the suit. Because there's no FaceTime so far this season, but I was expecting a lot more earnestness when I think of things like Excalibur, where Galahad goes to find the Holy Grail, or even like comic book stories like Daredevil, where he's lost everything and his identity's been exposed by the Kingpin, and he goes through this amazing arc to reclaim his title as the devil of Hell's Kitchen. These stories have been told numerous times, these redemptive tales, these tales of triumph over tragedy. And I'm not feeling the weight of that here. And when he stepped into the water, which is supposed to be, when we watched this little prequel thing where we all thought it was Din, we thought it was the flashback, I was feeling that this is important, this is impactful, this is mythical. When he starts stepping into the water here, I was like, it doesn't, it feels too easy. It feels wrong. It doesn't feel like he means it. I'm not getting that out of the body language or the intonation of the voice. I wasn't getting the moment. And Pedro Pascal, even if he's just voiceovering it, I have no idea if he's, I guess he is doing some acting because they say body double, but again, who knows? He's obviously had some issues with the show. But even in his voice acting, I'm not getting the gravitas of the moment. This is my baptism. This is my rebirth. This is my redemption. I am washing myself clean. And it just doesn't feel like that.
Yeah. And part of the reason for that is because he doesn't earn it, because he keeps getting his ass kicked every 5 seconds and does nothing.
It's not very
Had he
satisfying.
actually earned it, I think it would have had more impact.
Yeah.
My problem with all this, my problem with all this is just, if you didn't want to do season 3 of The Mandalorian, that's fine. If you wanted to do Bo-Katan season 1, that's fine too. I think she's a great character, and that's what this is. I mean, I've watched the 4 episodes now, and I know that's jumping ahead, but I've watched the 4 episodes. This is Bo-Katan's story. You know,
when you have emotional one-way streets, and then you're trying to sell us that they're going the opposite way.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, your mind doesn't miss anything.
Yeah.
When the vibe is wrong, when the emotions are wrong, when you're trying to convince me of something, but everything I've seen on screen is taking me down a different path, you can't pull it out in the last 5 minutes and think that means anything.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you could do the Rise of Mandalore or Bo-Katan season 1 or whatever it is you want, featuring the Mandalorian and all these other characters. That's fine, you know. But it's obvious that the suits are like, people know this brand, the Mandalorian, so we're going to sell them on this while giving them this, and it's like,
well, that's the mistake they made with Star Wars in general. Like, they'll buy anything Star Wars. Your numbers say different after a while. And when you bait and switch,
the MCU, same thing.
Yeah, when you bait and switch on me like this, when you have raised my expectations, and then you just throw all that out the window, you do emotional damage.
Yeah, and the part that's killing me, like I said, you know, a little while ago, is that Bo-Katan's getting a lot of hate out there from fans. You know, people that I respect are giving a lot of hate on her. And honestly, I think what they've done with Bo-Katan so far and what I've seen going forward has been pretty good. And I think the journey they've written for her is pretty good. It's just that they're doing all of it while taking a dump on Din Djarin. So,
yeah, we could have just had another show, Rise of
Mandalore. They did Din Djarin dirty, and because of that, it makes Bo-Katan look bad, you know, in the eyes of people that are looking for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it sucks.
It's unfortunate, and it's not fair.
It's too bad. Katie Sackhoff doesn't deserve that.
That's true. Have the courage to make the show you want, which is the Rise of Bo-Katan.
I have seen people calling Bo-Katan a Mary Sue, or calling Bo-Katan the next
she's not Rey, no.
You know, next Rey Skywalker. I'm like, no, Bo-Katan, all of what she's doing is earned. You know, she's a badass of her own right. So I'm like, sorry. I'll call it out when I see it, but I don't see that here. You know, so
that's not what's going on here, but it is at the expense of our main character, which is nonsensical. And then Jeff used my exact same words, bait and switch and wait, because, you know, that's what they're doing here. They're bait and switching, and the weight of the moment is missing, which means the build up to it was poor. And then what Steve said about, you know, having him do something like kill a mythical creature, you know, so we get the glimpse of the mythosaur. We see that, you know, that eye. But see, to me, again, that's why I'm telling you, how can I put it? When I said self-satire or self-parody, it can be that the person writing the episode, or maybe the mandates from the powers that be, aren't taking it seriously themselves. So they throw in little things there that they think should be funny, but you can't mask your contempt, because that moment was a Mulder and Scully moment. If you think back, especially to early seasons of X-Files and also to the X-Files movie, whenever the monsters or the supernatural or the whatever creatures would manifest, Scully would always be out. She wouldn't see it, but Mulder would. Every time, even in the movie, when the ship rises up and takes off, she's got her head down, she's out of it. Mulder's like, wow. It felt like that to me, but not in a good way. It felt like you're going to have a character actually get a glimpse of this thing. And I understand, like what you said about her beliefs coming back around or whatever. And she talks about it next episode, but Din is just out. He just misses, you know, the biggest moment of the show. And that's typical of this episode. All of the big moments, he's not in, he misses. And it just felt, like I said, it felt to me like somebody was giving it to him on purpose. Like, aha, you don't even get to see, the mythical beast that is literally the bedrock of everything you people believe, but you don't get to see it, but she does.
I mean, the very first image we get in this series is the Beskar skull of the mythosaur, that represents the Mandalorians and their creed.
Mm-hmm.
And how ironic that he doesn't get to see it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it just feels like another.
It feels like Kathleen Kennedy.
And for those of you who want to see a way to do it right, I would say go watch the Aliens series after Alien 1. That whole thing is about Ripley, but they introduced to us a lot of characters who a lot, but it's never, and they have big moments.
But it's still Ripley's story the whole time.
And none of it is at the expense of Ripley, ever. Ever.
Did I mention that I hate Dyed Ripley in this show? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, because we don't want to go too long. So just with the first 2 episodes, we have our watched ahead, but just with what we've seen so far.
I feel like I've passed this cough around to everybody else. Steve's next.
It feels like once again, like when we went over Andor really ramped up and really had a strong payoff, but it was The Rebellion Begins.
Yeah.
It was Rise of the Empire. And in some cases, you could almost take Cassian and Andor out and still have enough interesting elements left to follow the story. That means it's not your story if that can happen. And that's the same thing that's happening here in 2 episodes. It's the rise of Bo-Katan. I agree completely that Bo-Katan is not a Mary Sue. I agree completely that Katie Sackhoff deserves no hate. None of this is her fault. That's shouldn't even be a thought. It's a shame that we've gotten to that point in fandom where we even have to say that. So that's not what's going on. But trashing your main character, making them useless for an entire episode, snatching all the good moments that could have and should have been theirs, doesn't feel like a coincidence to me. That doesn't feel like that's a random act. That feels like it's a very deliberate way to say, just like they did with Kenobi when Leia's stepdad said, she's just as important as he is. I understood the whole vibe of Kenobi because it was going to be about that. Okay, because whoever was behind that was mad that Luke got all the attention, which sounds like a tantrum.
It's so one of those moments where, like, the bat suit will be perfect when it fits a woman.
Okay, that's it. That's the rallying cry.
That's the vibe right there, man. The Force is female.
Everything was going woke. When we saw the first Batwoman trailer, we were like, oh, Lord.
Next, you're going to tell me Captain America's throwing a garbage can lid. So.
Yeah.
I can do this all day.
Well, we could do a whole pod on that. All right. So I won't say I'm cautiously optimistic because I'm neither. What I will say going forward is I hope there's enough of a payoff of the Mandu-Grogu relationship because we literally sacrificed the show for it. So I hope that is justified by the end of this season. If not, if it's just a rise of Bo-Katan, then I'm going to be counting the minutes until the end, I'm sad to say. So I hope it surprises me. Well, I hope it surprises me like Andor and pulls it out towards the end and has a retroactive effect of having everything we've seen up to that point make sense. Because in Andor, once I saw the tree milk, I was like, really? We need that? But it turns out, yes, we did. We really need to see the grassroots. We needed to see the sacrifice that people were making. And that was what that show was about on every level to make the rebellion work. So I want to see some payoff between this father and son that both turned their backs on the lives they could have had because they have to be together. Then you have to pay that off.
Yeah. I'm gonna make a projection.
Okay.
Now we see Grogu still wearing his like little Yoda robes.
Well, later on, he gets his Flavor Flav clock, but I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah. I think he's already wearing it. I think it's under his robes, and I think they're once again. I'm going to use a Lord of the Rings reference. I think they're going to do a Frodo moment where he's going to get shot. We're all going to think he's dead. They're going to tear jerk us. Mando's going to get super upset. Either go ballistic or just break down crying, and then he's going to miraculously come back up, and then we see I'm wearing the Mithril. I mean the Beskar. Calling it now.
Will he take his helmet off and have to go take another dip into the waters of Lake Minnetonka when he's crying? So.
Yeah, when they make a helmet for Grogu, how they gonna deal with them ears? I'm just asking a question.
It's gonna happen. It's happening.
Them ears, though, his ears are 3 times bigger than Yoda's. Do you know that?
I know they got like get squished down. Like you don't want slits in the side. You can't seal the helmet around that.
He's either Batman or Dumbo. He ought to be able to fly with them mugs. But anyway, okay, so we're going to call it there. Like I said, I think my co-host is a bit more optimistic than I, because I'm not feeling it. I'm hoping that I'm wrong and that it pulls out again towards the end like Andor did, and it has a retroactive effect of making all this make sense. I really, really hope so. So let me thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nims.
Oh, thank you, and glad to be back. And I will just say real quick in closing, I've resigned myself that I'm watching the Rise of Bo-Katan, and I'm just going to enjoy that. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bracy.
Yeah, I'm also resigned to the fact that because I've only watched the first 2 episodes, that we are likely watching the Rise of Bo-Katan. With that said, my headcanon of The Mandalorian ended with season 2. That was a perfect ending for that particular story. So they should have just gone with the Rise of Mandalore, the Rise of Bo-Katan, whatever. And just had the courage and the convictions to do that.
Do the show you wanted to do. That's right. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, thanks. I will say, when they were talking about Andor, they said it would be a 2-season thing. I have a feeling that Mando should have been 2 seasons, because it seems like that was the arc that we're on. And because the series is making money, they don't want it to pull the plug on it. So they're pushing this farther, and they didn't really have a plan for it. And I think that it's showing. There are interesting elements that I've seen in this season so far, but there's nothing really coming together except for Bo-Katan's story. And while that's not a bad story to watch, it really is not The Mandalorian. It's not what we signed up for. And
this is the thing with the TV series, though. Like, if we keep doing these series, because Star Wars has so many characters, we tell somebody's story in a season or 2, and then they just pop up every now and again. Like, okay, let's throw a fan favorite in here, but we're doing this person's story.
Guess what? That's a problem with
an episode.
That's a problem with Western comics as well. Sometimes stories end, so it should end.
You guys said
stories. Yeah, that's why I like manga, because stories eventually end. I was watching this wonderful retrospective about Lost in Space, and Jonathan Harris, when the show got canceled after its extremely long run on TV, and all the subsequent things he did, the rest of the cast was incredibly surprised and disheartened by it. And Harris, Dr. Smith, turned to his castmates and said, "The curtain always comes down eventually."
Well, you guys said you were resigned to watching The Rise of Bo-Katan. My resignation is for Star Trek Picard season 3, because that is Star Trek TNG member bears. I'm resigned to that. and
that's kind of how I feel about Strange New Worlds. Is that it's basically TOS member berries.
Yeah. So
you couldn't pay me enough to watch another episode of Star Trek Picard. And that's all I'm going to say. So.
I'm just talking about the stuff we're resigned to. But anyway, so we're going to call it there. So thank you to everybody that watched us live. Don't forget to check out the other channels on YouTube in terms of Comic Crusaders, and because we definitely have something for everybody. Whatever type of content you like in terms of fandom, if you like behind the scenes stuff, if you like creators, if you like new creators, if you like tech stuff, if you like retro movies, we've got something for you on Comic Crusaders. And me and this crew will see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.